So, how did you become, well, you? I'm not talking about the big dramatic life choices, but all those little automatic ways you think and react. Turns out there's this incredibly powerful ancient idea that explains exactly how we get shaped, one moment at a time. Let's get into it. Think about the very first time you tried to learn a new skill. Maybe something like learning to play the guitar. Remember how awkward that was? Your fingers just wouldn't cooperate. You had to stare at them, thinking super hard about every single chord change, every strum. It was slow, kind of frustrating, and it took every ounce of your concentration. Or, hey, maybe it was something like perfecting a recipe in the kitchen. That first time, you're glued to the cookbook, reading every single word. But after you've made it, I don't know, a dozen times, you don't even look at the book anymore. You just feel it. You know exactly how much spice to throw in, how long it needs. The whole thing just becomes second nature. So what's the secret sauce connecting all these things? It's really simple, but it's also incredibly profound. It's repetition. Just doing something over and over and over again. But here's the kicker. What if I told you this doesn't just apply to physical skills? This very same principle is shaping your mind, your personality, even your destiny right this second. Okay, let's start right there with this core idea, repetition. It's not just about practice makes perfect. It's more like a fundamental law of the universe, especially the universe inside our own heads, about how things gain strength and momentum. And this is where the magic happens. See, at first, all your effort is totally conscious. But as you repeat the action, it starts to reinforce itself. Every single time you play that chord, you're not just doing it, you're actually carving a little pathway in your mind, making it that much easier and more automatic for the next time. And eventually, the action itself becomes the reinforcement. Now, this idea is definitely not new. In fact, ancient Buddhist philosophy has this beautifully specific term for this whole process of self-reinforcement. It's a Pali term called Asevana Paccayo. Let's just break that down real quick. Asevana, that literally means repetition, or doing something again and again. So it's the condition where any thought or action makes the very next thought or action of the exact same kind stronger. The old texts use this amazing analogy to explain it. Imagine you have a piece of cloth and you spray it with perfume. The first spritz leaves a nice, light scent, right? But what happens if you spray it again? And then again tomorrow? The fragrance gets deeper, richer. It becomes part of the fabric itself. Well, our thoughts and our actions are just like that perfume. They are constantly, relentlessly scenting the fabric of our minds. Okay, now here's where this gets super important for our actual everyday lives. This whole principle is completely neutral. It doesn't care if the habit you're building is good for you or, terrible for you. It just strengthens whatever you put on repeat. Think about it. Every time you choose to be patient when you're frustrated, you're literally practicing patience. You're making it a stronger part of who you are. But every time you snap in anger, you're practicing that too, carving that pathway even deeper. Asevana reinforces both our kusala, our wholesome, skillful states, and our akusala, our unwholesome states. There's this classic story that shows this internal tug-of-war perfectly. It's about a very poor man named Kulakasataka. He and his wife were so poor, they only had a single cloak between the two of them. One night, he's listening to a teaching, and this overwhelming feeling of generosity just swells up in him. He wants to donate his only cloak. But then immediately another thought fires off, his deeply practiced, lifelong habit of stinginess, screaming, "No, if you do that, your wife will have nothing to wear." And all night long, this war just raged inside his head. This new, wholesome impulse of generosity would rise up and then get beaten back by that old, familiar habit of stinginess. It happened once, then twice, and finally, just as the sun was coming up, on the third try, the impulse of generosity was finally strong enough to win. He made the donation. It just goes to show you how incredibly powerful a long-practiced mental habit can be. So how does this repetition actually work on, like, a micro level? Well, the psychology here gets really specific. It describes a process called jhavana. You can think of it as a single mental impulse, like a flash of anger or a flash of kindness, that actually unfolds in 7 lightning-fast moments. This is the engine room where Asevana does its work. So when an impulse arises, it flashes through these 7 stages. The first moment is pretty weak, but because of Asevana, that first moment strengthens the second one, and the second one strengthens the third, and the third strengthens the fourth, and so on. They build on each other with incredible speed, like a tiny mental cascade. But get this, the peak power isn't at the end,
it's right in the middle, at the fourth moment. So why there? Because it has received the full reinforcing power of the first 3 moments before it. This is Asevana in action at the smallest possible scale you can imagine, showing how momentum builds almost instantly within a single thought.
All right, let's zoom way out now, because the principle of Asevana isn't just about learning skills in this life. In this way of thinking, it's also the explanation for those really deep-seated personality traits, those weird innate talents we have, or affinities that seem to go way beyond this one lifetime. So there's this story of a monk named Patthana Asevana. He spent 45 years meditating in the forest and was just completely at peace there. When his followers tried to get him to come live in a comfy monastery in the city, he gave this beautiful reply. He was basically saying, look, this isn't just a preference, it's my nature. And according to this teaching, that deep, unshakable connection he had with the forest was the result of Asevana. It was the perfuming of his mind with a love for solitude and nature, over not just a few decades, but over countless previous existences. The habit was just that deeply ingrained.
Or check out this other incredible story. There was a young servant girl named Puna, and one day she sees this very high-ranking, respected priest doing a ritual trying to wash away his bad deeds in a cold river.
And this young, supposedly uneducated servant girl comes up with this just stunningly brilliant piece of logic. She lays out the flaws in his thinking so clearly and so perfectly that the priest immediately realizes she's right and becomes a follower of her teacher.
So you have to ask, how on earth could she have this kind of profound wisdom? Well, the explanation given is, again, Asevana. For 6 straight lifetimes before this one, she had been a nun who had completely mastered these teachings. So even though her current situation was humble, the potential energy of all that repeated practice, that deep habit of wisdom, was still there, ready to come out. And this, of course, brings it all right back home to us right now. Because if every single thought, every action strengthens the next one just like it, then maybe the most important question we could ever ask ourselves is, what are we practicing? You know, every time you instinctively grab your phone to kill a second of boredom, you are practicing distraction. Every time you rehearse an angry argument in your head, you're practicing resentment. But on the flip side, every single time you choose to really listen to someone before you speak, you're practicing empathy. Every time you notice something beautiful on a walk, you're practicing gratitude. We are constantly, whether we know it or not, perfuming our own minds. So really the ultimate takeaway here is that there are no neutral moments. Every second of every day is a rehearsal for the person you are becoming tomorrow. The real question isn't if you're practicing something. You are. The question is, what are you practicing? What are you choosing to become an expert in?